Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We have a quorum in the room, so I will call the City of Homestead Community Redevelopment Agency meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, May 9th, 2023, and it is 5:17 p.m. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Here. Board Member Bailey.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry.
Board Member Fletcher.
He's online, isn't he?
Yes, he's online, but he's not. Board Member Fletcher. Board Member Avila.
Here.
Vice Chairman Guzman. Here. Chairman Losner.
Here. All right, thank you all. Are there any, Madam Director, any deletions or deferrals?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we have before us as tab 1 the minutes of the April 11th, 2023 CRA Board Meeting minutes. We have a motion to approve. Moved by Councilwoman Bailey.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Roth. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, our next item is tab 2, new business, car number 3886, the amended commercial enhancement grant for Camp LLC. Ms. Driver?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On February 8th, 2022, the CRA Board approved a commercial enhancement grant in the amount of $25,000 to Camp Chrome LLC to replace the windows of its building located at 633 and 645 North Chrome Avenue. The location of the building makes it eligible for a 75% contribution by the CRA and 25% contribution by the applicant. On December 14, 2022, the Board approved a resolution amending the original grant and changing it to a tri-party agreement between the CRA, Camp, and G&R Impact Windows and Doors, LLC, allowing for the CRA to pay the contractor directly for the services. Camp would still be responsible for its 25% contribution. G&R Impact Windows and Doors decided not to move forward with executing the agreement with the city/CRA. Staff informed Ms. Jeanette Varela, the owner of Camp, that the vendor chose to not move forward and offered her the option to return to the original arrangement and advised her that she could be reimbursed on a rolling basis. Staff recommends the CRA Board consider approving the attached resolution, amending the revised tri-party agreement and changing it back to the original agreement between the CRA and Camp. Camp would still be responsible for its 25% contribution.
Good, thank you, Ms. Driver. Any questions or comments from the board? We have a motion to approve. Moved by Councilman Roth. Seconded by the Vice Mayor. All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Next item, tab 3, is car number 3906, the first-time homebuyer impact fee and permit fee reimbursement program. Ms. Driver?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On May 11, 2021, the Homestead Community Redevelopment Agency Board approved a resolution adopting the First-Time Homebuyers Program guidelines and authorizing implementation of the program and the program guidelines. The purpose of the program is to provide financial assistance for down payment and/or closing costs to help low to moderate income families achieve the dream of owning a home. To help overcome escalating construction costs and home sales prices, the CRA allocated a portion of the program's funds in fiscal year 2023 for the purpose of reimbursing impact fees and/or permit fees up to $25,000 per home for developers providing housing units for sale to buyers otherwise eligible under the program. Developer eligibility includes for-profit and nonprofit entities seeking to develop affordable, for-sale housing units targeting first-time home buyers. Maximum sales price is $350,000, and that may be adjusted annually based on affordability guidelines provided by Miami-Dade County. The buyer household income must be between 80 and 120% of median income, and it's for newly constructed homes that are located within the CRA boundaries. Priorities will be given for homes constructed within the Southwest neighborhood. Staff recommends that the CRA Board of Directors approve the attached resolution adopting the guidelines for the First-Time Homebuyers Program, Impact Fee, and Permit Grant. and authorizing implementation of the program and the program guidelines.
Thank you, Ms. Driver. Board members, questions, comments? Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Driver. I'm in 100% support of this item. I did want you to remind us, how many lots do we have that are buildable in the CRA? I remember it was a very small number before, and I wanted to discuss with staff to see if we could make adjustments to our code to allow to build on lots that meet a specific threshold.
Okay, so we currently have 5 lots. 4 of those are the ones that MBC is building on. The remaining one is located on Southwest 4th Street and 6th Avenue. But because of its location, we always thought that that may not be suitable for a single-family home because it's right there on that main thoroughfare. And then we have 2 additional lots that the board approved purchase, I think it was 2 years ago, that we are going to unify those. They're small. They're like 2,500 square feet each. So we're going to unify those to make one lot that's large enough for one home. It's also on 6th Street next to where we're building the new homes with MBC. So that's what we have right now that's buildable.
And how many are not buildable?
Based on size or because of zoning issues?
Both.
So we have 20 lots that would not meet the minimum lot size, and so 36 of them are zoned for mixed use. 20 of those would not meet the minimum lot size.
26 of those are zoned for mixed, say it again?
We have 36 lots that are not zoned for single family that have the mixed use zone, 36 of them. 20 of those 30 would not meet the minimum lot size. So if we change the zoning for those, only 16 of those would be buildable because of size.
Thank you. Now to our development services. The way our code is written, from what I've read, is 1,200 square feet for a single-family home, minimum square footage, and 7,500 square feet for the lot size. Is that correct?
That's in the R1 district. So what zoning district is this? Are these lots located in? Various, right? Within the CRA. So likely Southwest neighborhood. So the Southwest neighborhood has different code requirements than the R1 district has. So in the R1 district, which is a single family district outside of the Southwest, the minimum lot size is 7,500 square feet. In the Southwest, each district has its own codified minimum standards. And as we previously talked about, when the plan was drafted and adopted, it was done so with the intent that and I'm looking up because I'm trying to remember and I'm paraphrasing, but a developer was to come and pick up lots, I mean blocks, not lots, and so it wasn't intended for infill development, but more so it was an area master plan. For lots that are legal non-conforming, there are, in some cases, minimum standards that we can look at if the underlying plat was platted before X time. If it's adjacent to another vacant lot, perhaps we can unify them. And so we would look at all of those scenarios individually to determine what the best development program would be.
So in that Southwest planned urban neighborhood,
Yes.
what is the minimum lot size that you could build on?
I have to pull the code. Just give me 1 minute. So in the single family district, bear with me 1 minute. Okay, so in the detached, single-family, the minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet, with a minimum depth of 50 feet and a minimum lot width of 25 feet.
Okay. So I would like, if we could have your office prepare something similar to the Chrome corridor analysis that you guys made with the 36 lots that are here, so that we could potentially have scenario where we can go below the 5,000 square feet and see what that would look like and bring it back to this board to see if they would like to proceed with amending the code to allow something smaller than 5,000 square feet, which would entice more developers to build that could also utilize this program.
Through the chair, if I may, we still have the issue of those lots being zoned mixed use.
Okay, well, we'll address the mixed use so that we can get it to something conforming to make it available so that developers can start to infill those lots. Yeah?
Now, I wanted to ask Ms. Driver, though, but of that bag full of lots, whatever the 30 number was, and only, let's say, 20 of them right now as standalone lots are buildable, is it accurate to say that we have adjoining non-conforming lots that we could aggregate, that they're all not slivers scattered about the southwest, that we do have those that we could combine?
Yes, sir. There are a few in there that could be combined. And I can, when Michelle and I get together to do this analysis, we'll point that out. I'm trying to pull the map up now because I do have a map that shows me all the lots. But there are a few, not as many as we would like, but there are a few that could be adjoined.
Right, and I think that's important for that analysis that's been proposed tonight to determine how many lots truly, what our true need is to even talk about going smaller. What's kind of wasted land out there. I think, Council, did you want to join in?
Yeah, it was, it's a kind of a cool little conversation, but could we get a map for each of us that actually show each of the lots' locations and their sizes so that we could see exactly what we're talking about when we look at it? Because Michelle brought up an interesting point that they were never designed to be infill lots, that they were designed to be bought up in blocks. And now we're faced with this position that we have infill potential, but we may not have lot sizes to go along with that. So if we can see the picture that you see with the 36 lots and the 20 in the zoning and all that stuff, then we can figure out definitely an infill plan or whatever we need to do to stimulate some growth in that area.
I think to a certain extent that already exists. I think several months ago, we had kind of an Excel sheet of the folio numbers and addresses and the sizes with an aerial with the numbers of those lots. So that is somewhat readily available. So we won't have to spend time on that. But back,
So the ones that are mixed use, if a developer wanted to develop that lot, they would have to develop residential or commercial on the bottom. It'd have to be a 2-story building. Yeah. See, that's the part I don't think makes sense in that area. If you're forced to build on a 5,000 square foot lot, if you're forced to build a commercial establishment on the bottom and a residential on the top, I just don't think that makes sense in that specific area.
we can take another look at those maps and get a better handle on that. But back to the issue at hand. What brought us to this conversation? I understand that right now we only have a fund of $100,000 for first-time home buyer assistance, limited to this defined geographic area. And that what this does, this would be part of that fund. It's not in addition to that fund.
Correct, it's a part of the 100,000 fund.
Now, and I don't know if the manager shared my concerns or thoughts with you, but I'm not a big believer in that giving developers money or incentives really brings down the cost of rent or the cost of the house. And I kind of looked at this from the perspective of it's easy to calculate when someone goes to closing what the impact and permit fees were that were paid with respect to that unit. So I kind of come at it from the direction of making that an allowable contribution of assistance to the buyer. Because, we know the developer is going to put it at the most that developer can get out of it. And again, I'm just not a believer that if we reimburse the developer the impact fees, that's going to be passed along to the buyer. So if we assume that all that's built into the cost of the house, we offset that with additional permitted assistance to the buyer at closing rather than giving it to the developer up front. They'll know that they will get it back on the sale. It's kind of where I'm coming from. I think there's been some big articles as to some of the county programs that, giving to developers has just not been a pass-through. So I kind of like to look at it from that direction. And if you refresh my memory, to the extent we give assistance, is that a gift at that moment, or is it memorialized in a forgivable subordinate mortgage typically?
It's a forgivable loan for the buyer.
Yeah, thank you. So, that would be my thought, to make it an additional amount that's available to the buyer at closing rather than giving it to the builder up front.
And
Yeah, let me just think about that and process what you just said, because part of that would be conditioned on mortgages too. If they're going to financing, I would think, then how we present that money to a buyer. And because obviously they could take their permitting fees and add it to a HUD in some way and take it as a credit from the buyer. So, because that's the whole object is to give them an incentive to come here and reduce the builder's fees, right? And as the mayor's trying to say, we don't want to give that directly to the developer, but it has to be in some way a credit from the buyer to the builder in order to show it on a closing statement. So I don't know if we could figure that part out, and I'm in agreement. We don't really need to give it to the developer. They can achieve it through the process at the end, yes, but we have to figure out how that all comes together in a package and financing and all that stuff, because I'm sure there'd be some rules and some things that we've got to abide by when it comes to that as well. So, but yeah, I'm in agreement with it.
Yeah, but if we could take a look at that angle to not be putting it directly into the hands of the developer.
sure.
Because we can't just waive the fees either, right?
No.
Yeah, so we want to figure out a way to incentivize the development in that area. So, okay, I'm good with that. Just, we got to clear that up a little bit.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes.
So, yes, we can look into that and figure out how that could be framed to where it would be a credit from the buyer to the developer. One thing that we did do is we capped it at the sales prices at $350,000. So we were thinking by doing that, that might, help avoid the scenario that you just mentioned about the developer keeping pocketing the money. But we can definitely look into figuring out how we can do it a different way so that the buyer still benefits and it works out to where the sales price stays at $350 and they can still get it financed.
Yes. Board Member Bailey?
Thank you, Chairman. So the first thing that I was wondering about this is with the maximum sale price of $350, what is something that we can do to make sure that that is also in line with the size of the house? is there a, we need to think about that to make sure that it is an appraised value as well, not that they're just saying a one-bedroom would be 350.
That's actually a good point. We hadn't considered that. We looked at what the homes that we're having built for us, their size and cost, and so that's what our focus was on. I didn't think about,
So just
having the size. That's a
another,
good point.
yeah, another detail to add in there to make sure that it's correlating to the correct size. So if we're looking at buyers that are between 80 and 120% median income, is that realistic that after this assistance, they will be able to continue making those payments? Are there other, yeah, okay. That's,
At this time, there are several programs available for first-time home buyers. There was just an individual who qualified for a mortgage on a house that's 355, and she was getting like $100,000 in assistance. So right now, there are programs available.
wonderful. No, just for us to keep that in mind also, that we make sure that we continue that process as much as we can with them, not that after the first year or two, they would lose it for any reason. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Vice Chair.
I would assume that if a developer's gonna build a house and they have a maximum sales price of $350 for a single family, it's probably gonna cost $350 because there are townhouses that cost more than $350 at the moment, and I would consider a single family a bit more beneficial than a townhome. So if we entertained the alternative building designs like steel homes or container, whatever they bring that passes Florida building code, and if they were to develop that home at a drastically reduced price, do we have any measures in place to only allow them to increase that margin by a certain percent? Because I don't know, a developer would probably just say, hey, even though I acquired and was able to build this house for 200, I'm still going to charge the 350. That could be a possible scenario.
We can look at that and figure out how we would tailor that for our guidelines. I can tell you that in speaking with a developer of steel homes, they're right around the same cost as our regular single-family, the traditional single-family home. So their cost per square foot to develop is right there in par. So I don't know that we would have that scenario, but we can definitely look into it. If we do, how we would address it.
Is this considering us donating the lots, or?
Is what this program considering us donating lots?
Right, when you say the developer like Steel Homes, if they were right there, depending on the land acquisition cost, that could change the scenario.
Conversation with this particular developer, it did include us donating the land. Their benefit is that they can construct it faster than a traditional home. The costs are still, because the cost is still for them is the same as it is for a traditional home builder. So they explained to me that the price per square footage is going to be about the same. However, the benefit is that they can do it faster.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Board Member Fairclough Staggers. Didn't see you come in. Yes, Council Board Member Avila.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this particular down payment assistance or first-time homebuyer program assistance, it's not where we own the land. It's to incentivize property owners to develop the land they already own, correct?
It's broad. It could be either or.
It could be either or. Okay. And in the cases of the lots that we're trying to identify as being buildable, I know that we'll maybe have that workshop where we can see, in the broad scheme of things, if those 36 lots, could fall into those categories or not, but that would still have to be within the CRA district, right? Okay. And then with regards to the lots that don't need any workshops or code changes, we're talking about, did you say one? Two.
There are two, but they need to be unified to turn into one.
Okay. And I know that we had set off we set up the program about, what, a year ago for the first-time homebuyer?
It was fiscal year 2021, almost 2 years ago.
Almost 2 years. And I know that there has been some activity, some applications. Of course, the process of closing on a home, it can fall apart at any milestone. And so I typically probably would not want to meddle with the funds on this particular program, but because I know that we really haven't been able to issue any particular mortgages on it, and we also have in upcoming discussions citywide assistance programs that we're going to discuss, I'm okay with trying to activate and incentivize the development of these properties in our downtown area, in our CRA, by trying this method. I agree that if we do it where the builder's getting the benefit, then is it really trickling down to the buyer themselves? I think it'll just come down to bottom line. The property has to appraise, the property price, if we have it set at $350, that may in and of itself be a deterrent to building in the first place. But if there's other programs out there where you can combine funds, maybe we don't have to have that price. But for now, being cautious in how we move forward and trying to be good stewards of the funding, I think that this is supportable right now. But I'd like to just keep it on our radar, not talk about it 2 years from now, but let's talk about it maybe 6 months from now and see how word has gotten around, if we've gotten any other applications, just for closing assistance, not just for infill building. So that's where I'm at, I'm okay with it now, and let's just keep an eye on it. Thank you.
And just to clarify, it's really contemplated that the first-time homebuyer assistance would be deployed to assist the purchasers of the Minority Builders Coalition sites.
Well, no, it's open to anyone in the community.
No,
that
I
fits our-
understand that, but very likely, those are the four that are,
Yes.
probably out there first,
Most likely, yes.
most likely. So where does that leave us?
So we need to go back and check to see if there's a way that we can arrange this to where it's a credit from the buyer to the developer. And so, and you guys please give me guidance. You're okay with this program if we're able to set it up to where it's a credit from the buyer to the developer, as opposed to the way that we're presenting it, in which we're presenting it as it would be a reimbursement to the developer. So is that that's what I thought I understood you saying, Councilman Roth, is that instead of what we propose, CRA wouldn't cut a check to the developer as a reimbursement of the impact fees. Instead, it would be at closing, and it would go as a credit from the buyer to the developer.
Right, if we were to agree to incentivize for fees and permits, yes. But I have a little concern about giving them the lots as well, and then waiving the fees and doing all of this in order to have them sell a house for $350,000, which in today's market, I don't even know if they can do that. So I don't know if capping it at $350 is an incentive to a developer, even though they're getting, how much are the permits fees in impact fees on average? Michelle, can you give us an answer or a number for that?
I would have to get a firm number, but I think impact fees are around $15,000, and then the permit fees around $5,000. Those are rough estimates, between $5,000 and $10,000. So we're looking at, and that's why we set it as a maximum of $25,000 per home. But I'd have to get confirmed numbers.
If I may, just for a point of clarification on that, I recall that when we approved the lots with the Minority Builders Group, that we capped the assistance to 10,000 in those cases. So just double check that for us, because there was a lot of discussion about we're giving them the lot and then they're also going to get 25 grand from assistance from us, that we wanted them to find more assistance from other programs to ensure that the amount that the buyer was financing did not exceed a certain percentage, and that our assistance, apart from the donation of the land, was also capped. So please double check that.
The assistance for the buyer for our lots is 20,000. You guys voted to increase it to 20,000. It was at 10,000, and you increased it to 20.
But just for sake of argument, there have been some scattered standalone single-family homes constructed in the CRA, and I don't know so much about the True Southwest, but certainly in the CRA boundaries, there have in the last few years been some, like, south and west or southerly of Homestead Middle School. Down in that area, we've seen some. So thinking out loud to Mr. Roth's concerns, couldn't it just be an entry, on the settlement statement where amounts paid by or on behalf of the buyer, you've got the gross purchase price, and you'd have, contribution from the city of Homestead for permit and impact fee reimbursement. I mean, the gross price is going to be the gross price. And what we're going toward is trying to reduce the amount that a buyer has to borrow and make payments on and come out of pocket with.
Right, so if they get basically the buyer gives them a credit for 20,000 based on what they're estimating the impact fees and permits are, it directly comes off the purchase price of the home, which lowers the principal amount that the buyer is gonna owe, which will decrease the amount of their payments every month as well. So that as long as the permit fees are not added to it and then subtracted back out. So it's a double whammy, and it balances. This is the price of the house.
It's a true benefit to the buyer.
Right. They're gonna get a $20,000 credit off of the sale price of the house that's maxed at $350, which reduces some of their costs along the way over the long term of the mortgage. That's reasonable for me. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're bringing the money to closing. We're a third party to the closing. So if you can find a way to make that happen.
Mr. Chair, I had a
Yes,
question too.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Typically, when it's a new construction development, there are some fees that are passed on to the buyer that are not typically in traditional real estate sales, like the dock stamps on the deed, the hookup fees to, whatever infrastructure we have. So I don't know if we've looked at that too, to ensure that it's not offset and it brings the buyer right back to normal closing cost fees, because sometimes those things can add up when it's new construction.
The dock stamp, I'm not sure of. I believe that in the cost estimations that I reviewed for MBC some time ago, that it included, in their cost, it included the hookup fees. So I don't know about the dock stamp. I'd have to check that, but that one I know is included.
From experience, I've noticed that developers' contracts are highly favorable towards the developer. Most of all of the fees are passed on to the buyer. So maybe if we could take a look at that as well, just to ensure that the buyer is truly getting the benefit when they're purchasing in the CRA.
So take a look at that for houses built on CRA lots?
Yeah,
or
houses built on CRA lots.
On our lots, okay.
Oh, but why not across the board, though? The scattered lots within the CRA that private people have acquired those lots and built a spec house.
I'm okay with that as well.
So to clarify that, Ms. Driver, it's across the board. It's lots in the CRA, not CRA lots.
Since we're talking about looking at the settlement statement, which happens at closing, I'm trying to see how we would be able to view it and have any say-so at that point.
Their attorney can provide you a preliminary, just to give you an idea of what their fees are, and it could also be in the purchase contract of what the fees are going to, what fees are going to be charged to the buyer, or what are some pass-through fees to the buyer.
Okay, and if those fees are passed to the buyer, then we say, no, you can't take advantage of our program? I mean, what's the recourse if they are passing on to the buyer?
Because if we pass this now the way it is, then those fees can be passed on to the buyers.
Okay, so then we're saying that, no, you can't have those fees passed on to the buyer. If we see it in their settlement statement, then we need to let them know you can't pass that on, otherwise you can't get this
Yeah,
money.
but legally, I don't know at that point how you
That's-
go backwards.
That sounds great.
Well, but we could impose that if you're contemplating ceding more lots to private developers to construct homes on. That can be a condition of the conveyance of CRA or city-owned lots. Like, typically, someone applying for the program, though, through Joe Blow Construction Company, is going to come to you during their due diligence period, and perhaps we should craft that the dock stamps will be paid, because typically documentary stamp taxes are paid for by the seller. And I agree, and typically in large-scale developments, developers will cut your throat for $5 and they pass everything off to the buyer. On these scattered projects, though, I don't know that we have that same situation. We don't have the big builders, the big developers at this point coming in and doing. It's the small guys, the hobby contractors, if you will, coming in and doing that. But there's got to be some point in time where everybody understands that the people who are availing themselves of our program as first-time home buyers are not to be charged for whatever that may be, hookup fees, dock stamps, whatever that may be. Is there a term sheet now? Is there anything built into that program?
No, we don't have a term sheet for that program. No.
So that's probably something we need to look at. Board Member Avila?
Thank you. And that's kind of where I was going, because if we're going to do a down payment assistance directly at closing for the buyer, okay, to direct benefit the buyer, then really nothing is changing with our program. That's what we already have right now, is up to $25,000 in assistance to the buyer for closing, whether it's applied portion to the down payment and portion to closing costs and combined, whatever the first mortgage lender deems allowable, which is similar to the down payment programs with Miami-Dade County and others. So really nothing is changing, and I think that the spirit of this conversation began with trying to incentivize the builders to build affordable homes for residents in our community. So if we're, if the majority isn't comfortable with going the route of trying to cut the deal with the developer to build the house, then we just leave things the way that they are, and we just continue to promote the program. But whether it's a new construction home or an existing home, the buyer at the end of the day is going to reap the benefit of the down payment assistance. The property is going to have to meet the appraised value. The first mortgage is going to have to be conforming and acceptable to FHA, which has its own slew of guidelines and requirements. So I think the question is, for tonight is not so much how are we going to revamp our program that we already have in place, but how are we going to try to incentivize the builders to actually develop a product that we want in the CRA area. And your recommendation was to try to offset some of those costs on the building side of things, which it is the cleanest and simplest route, because if you put it on the buyer side at closing, the LTV can only go to 105. So whether they're getting the assistance from us, from the county, from PHCD, it can only go up to a certain amount of money anyway. and the developer's going to still build the property at its maximum benefit, and it's going to have to appraise, or they're going to cut their costs on materials and other areas to make their buck. So unless we're willing to control the permitting fees or the impact fees, then we just leave everything else the way that it is. I'm not in favor of rehashing our down payment assistance program and trying to add more obstacles. Not that I'm insinuating that's where the discussion was going, but I want to clarify that I think that the program, the way that it was written, where it mirrors the county's program, is the simplest way possible. And I think that maybe we just need to do a better job at reaching the maybe the real estate offices and letting them know and educating them that the product is available, but it is only currently for the CRA area, which is only going to have a certain amount of properties for sale at a given time. And if we are giving 20 grand to minority builders, that's 80 grand out of the pot right there. It's 4 units, right? So, I say that we let it rest and let's maximize the down payment program citywide, and that'll start to generate more, more demand, I think, for the product.
If I may, Mr. Chair. So if minority builders, if we're closing before this fiscal year happens, then yes, that 80,000 that we're talking about now will be spent. I don't know that we're closing before this fiscal year. So that we still have that $100,000 that could go to assist, someone else at this time. And you are correct that with the program, the way that you all designed it, it works in the benefit of the buyer. What's happening now and what we keep hearing and seeing is the escalating costs, the sales prices keep increasing. And when talking to developers, why are you increasing the price of your home? They continue to go back to construction prices are increasing. So in trying to be proactive and figure out a way to be able to help in that situation, because that's the only thing we can come up with is, well, what if we had a program to where we could reimburse for the impact fees and permit fees? You all know that's like a big thing people complain about all the time are the impact fees and permit fees. So that's why we thought this may be a good program to present to you guys for consideration to, again, help our end buyer, because pretty soon our target buyer, they're not going to be able to afford a house, even in the Southwest neighborhood. Homes are selling, we've seen homes selling for in excess of $400,000 over in the Southwest. I don't know none of our buyers would be able to afford that. So that's what we're trying to accomplish with this program recommendation.
Yeah, thank you. Board Member Fairclough-Staggers.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is a very noble gesture to try to incentivize the developers in order to develop affordable housing for those who really want to experience the American dream. But I don't think we'll be able to make a real impact in that. Some of us who have high-paying jobs probably can't buy a home now. It's just too cost prohibitive. So for me, I would just prefer to keep the program as it is, because I think it works at this point. Incentivizing the developers with $25,000, I'm not even sure that'll make an impact, because in your package you indicated that the average price, according to Zillow, was $401. It's probably higher than that now. It's higher than that. So although we want to help the developers and to bring down their costs, I don't think we'll have a real impact. So for me, I would just prefer to keep the program as it is.
And for me, I think when you talk in terms of incentivizing developers to come here, the incentive is the knowledge that there is a pool of money available for buyers. We're not paying the developers to come here, although some of them are asking for free land and others are not. I think the incentive to come here is that ability to fund buyers. So is the answer to increase the amount of assistance available? And however it's applied is applied? I don't know the answer to that. I just, you're right, prices are prices. What's the county program maxed out? No, I'm talking about in terms of price. Purchase
They're
price.
at 352,
Okay.
and they also have a impact fee reimbursement program. We modeled this one after their impact fee reimbursement program, which is for low-income, low affordable housing developers.
Now, is this contemplated that really we would be probably behind a county layer of assistance for these home buyers anyway?
We're hoping that they can take advantage of every layer of assistance that's available.
Yeah, it's not as if whatever we're giving is going to, solely going to put those folks into a home. There's other county programs out there.
Correct. As I mentioned earlier, the lady that got $100,000 worth of assistance, which included our 10, would have included our 10.
I have a question. Oh,
Yes, go ahead. Then we'll-
thank you. On the way that it stands right now, our down payment assistance program, we do not have a price cap. That is, the price can be standard market rate.
Sales price cap? Is that
Correct.
what you're saying? Correct, we do not.
Correct. Okay, good. Because I was thinking for a minute, maybe that's the reason why we haven't been able to do any loans or any assistance approvals on that. But I think that it is that the size of the area that this money is intended for. The people who are, if the people are going to buy in the CRA, somebody has to be willing to sell, and those sellers have to go somewhere too. So there's not a lot of inventory available. And now we're back to square one of trying to generate the inventory. So with regards to how you were developing, some of these ideas for us to consider, I mean, have we had any workshops with developers? Have we brought developers to the table and said, what would help you? And maybe what the vice mayor was saying about having the workshop and looking at those 36 lots, maybe that would be the catalyst for the discussion and trying to get the developers at the table to say, okay, if you were to do the impact fees, would it really make an impact or not? If we were to change code and zonings, would that really incentivize or generate or stimulate more development? I think that starting out with the workshop and seeing if we can get some feedback from the development community is a step in the right direction on trying to create the change we want to see. But the program, the way it is, it can stand alone. Our down payment assistance can stand alone, or it could piggyback, with other county. The MDEET program recently, as of December, increased their assistance to $28,000. So if we're giving 25 and they're getting another, let's just round it to 30, I mean, that's a lot of money for a buyer to be able to buy a home in Miami-Dade County. The way that it stands right now, it would have to be the CRA. That's a great product and a great program. There is no cap on the price with the MDEET program now, or loan amount. That has been removed. That came from the state of Florida because of surtax funds, so they're eliminating a lot of the barriers. So I'm seeing it in my line of work. I'm sure that a lot of the real estate agents that are working in Homestead can also say the same, that down payment assistance is what's allowing buyers to actually get to the closing table and fund. So I think we need to just be a little bit patient with the program the way we have it. Let's market it if we can push on social media and maybe contact the brokers in our city of Homestead. I know we've got some big ones, obviously the Kai's Company, Avanti Way, but let's also do our due diligence in making sure the material and the information is being sent to them and wait it out.
Yeah, there's a lot of assistance out there. Just by way of example, it appears that a new family in my neighborhood that bought new construction got, looks like $138,000 in assistance to buy a new home with county and state assistance. 318. That was a price. Yeah, that was a county lot that was given to a builder. As there is a lot of assistance out there. Yes, Vice Chair.
No, I guess the consensus is just to keep the program the way it is and move forward. Is that what the consensus is?
Sounds like
Yes.
it.
Yes, I just wanted to add something. I agree. I think we should keep it the way it is. But what I also think we need to do, just a bit forward thinking and moving forward, we need to be a bit more robust and bold. I think we should increase that. If we have $100,000, how many people will really feel the impact? 4 families, 4 or 5 families. And there is a huge need, a huge demand out there for assistance. So I think we need to step it up a bit. I think we need to add more money to the pot. Me, I double it to 200,000. So that's my thought.
Budget time's coming.
That's what I was just getting ready to say, Mr. Chair. We can definitely increase it when this upcoming budget year, no problem. And if I may, I just want to add, we did have a conversation with a few developers when considering this program. One of them is an infill developer for Miami-Dade County, and he said, no doubt, getting that reimbursement of the impact fees from the county helped him be able to stay at their cap 352, I'm sorry. And then we spoke with 2 other developers, and they all said yes, that this would be beneficial. So that's why we felt comfortable that we were kind of on the right track with that goal. But we will move forward, excuse me, or not, as you guys direct.
All right. So what are you moving?
That it continues as is until,
Oh, we just
Talk
take,
budget for
take
next
no
year.
action on this.
So the motion would be just to set this aside and continue under the current guidelines.
That's your
Is
motion.
that
Set it
what we're
aside and
hearing?
Continue forward as is.
We're going to leave this alone?
right, because there's no option to talk budget yet, right?
No,
That
not-
comes
we're
soon.
not there yet.
Okay,
So-
yes.
And I'll second that, but I still would like to have the workshop about the 36 lots and invite those developers to come and participate in the conversation if possible.
Absolutely, and those maps do exist, you know, as to what we do have under our control now, and that maximum potential of buildable lots of whatever size they may be. Vice Chair?
How fast can we have that workshop? So we give it a specific timeline.
I think the maps already exist, Vice Mayor, so we'll dust everything off, and hopefully within this week or next week, we'll schedule a meeting already.
End of June for me.
And I think that will be dependent, we'll need to coordinate with development services because I think there was some additional analysis requested as to lot size. I don't know how soon they'll be able to get that, but certainly by next month, we'll be having conversations.
Good, thank you. All right, so we have a motion to set this aside. Is that correct terminology?
Well, the motion is not to adopt this and
Not to
to
adopt,
leave the
okay.
first-time home buyer program as is.
All right, so that's been moved and seconded, moved by Board Member Bailey, seconded by Board Member Avila. All in favor? Any opposed? Very good. The next, okay, so I believe that concludes the CRA agenda. Anything further, Ms. Driver?
No, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Manager? Any further
No,
on
Mayor.
CRA?
No, Chairman.
We have a motion to adjourn, moved by Board Member Avila, seconded by Board Member Bailey. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, the CRA meeting is adjourned, and when the clerk's ready to roll, we will adjourn the, or convene the committee of the whole meeting. If you're not here, we'll start. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'd like to call the City of Homestead Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, May 9th, 2023, and it is now 6:13 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilwoman Bailey? Here. Councilwoman Fairclough Staggers? Here. Councilman Roth? Here. Councilwoman Avila? Here. Councilman Fletcher? Vice Mayor Guzman?
Here.
Mayor Losner?
Here. All right. Mr. Manager, are there any additions, deletions, or deferrals?
No, Mayor.
Okay. First item is our approval of the April 11th, 2023 Committee of the Whole minutes that we have before us. I'll entertain a motion for approval. Moved by the Vice Mayor.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Bailey. All in favor? Any opposed? Next item, tab 2, motion to place car number 3889 on the council agenda. Career Source South Florida Summer Youth Employment Program 2023 agreement. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. From 2017 through 2019, the City of Homestead partnered with Career Source of South Florida to provide funding for a summer youth employment program for Homestead youth. The program began with the funding commitment of $20,000 in 2017 and was increased to $50,000 in subsequent years. Due to COVID-19 emergency, the program did not occur in 2020 and was not included in the budget for subsequent years. Staff recommends that Mayor and Council approve the attached resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Career Source of South Florida and establish a budget in the amount of $50,000 for the Summer Youth Employment Program. This resolution also authorizes the city manager to renew this agreement for successive annual terms in accordance with the previous provisions of this agreement and subject to the city's annual budget.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Questions or comments from council? Vice Mayor, I think this was your item.
Yeah, I think we had a very lengthy discussion last time the Career Source was here. I'm in full support of this item. I think it's great for the city of Homestead.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I want to clarify, this is on a reimbursement basis, so the 50,000 would be a max out of the number of students that they contemplate.
You're absolutely correct, Mayor. They have to submit the proper documentation according to the agreement, showing that the individual went in, where they worked, how much they worked and such, and then we would reimburse them at that point.
As I expressed to you, the only concern I have is the automatic renewal. I'd like for us at budget time to be able to sit back, look at the results, the efficiency of the program, and then make that decision to go forward and perhaps even fund it at a better level rather than just an automatic renewal.
Whatever council's direction is.
My thought. Do we want to automatically renew or just during budget time sit back and look at the results and decide a funding level from them? Councilwoman Bailey.
Thank you, Mayor. I think not having an automatic renewal might hold them a little more accountable with their numbers and making sure that they are reaching out. That was my one question, is how are they finding the youth that are participating in the program? I think historically it's been a great program, but maybe the non-automatic renewal would help to make sure that they are specifically thinking of our Homestead students.
Absolutely. Thank you. Councilwoman Avila.
Thank you. I'm absolutely in favor of doing a review, even a periodic review, but can we do the best of both worlds where we give them we encourage them in that we want to renew them, but that it will be subject to an evaluation, an overall performance review?
Remember, I can earmark the monies into the budget, which does not get approved until September anyway, so it'll be past summer. At that point, we'll have all the data that we need, so council could go ahead and make a decision at that point.
I'm in favor of it being like, it's automatic, but not automatic. We can kind of hold them to the fire and say, we want results, we want to be able to review it and measure it, but we want to continue funding it. So if we can say that at the same time, that'd be great.
All right. I think what the manager's saying is you have a contract with no funding, depending upon, our review and budget decisions. Yeah, unfunded contract. I don't like these things that just roll over and that we perhaps lose sight of year after year after year. We may want to increase. So, yes, Councilwoman
I have a
Fairclough
question.
Staggers.
I have full faith in this program. This program has been around for a long time and has definitely been a value add in several municipalities as well as the school district. My question is, when you talk about the review and I guess the metrics, what exactly are you looking for?
What we would be looking at is how many individuals the program actually impacted, right? If it's 2 or 3 individuals only, or was the full summer they actually worked. So we would go ahead and put together benchmarks things that council will be looking for in terms
What
of
will council
performance
be
measures.
looking for? I think in the application, it told you how many kids that would benefit from it, so we already know that. We just have to make sure that they actually reside within city limits. So that's taken care of already. But what exactly are we looking for to determine the effectiveness of the program?
I would be looking at, okay, we have a maximum, we have a target. Okay, where were we in relation to that target? What was the mix of kids? What kind of jobs did they have? Was this menial labor? Was it something that they're learning a skill or a vocation? All of those kinds of things that, what did you do this summer? What did you provide to the youth of our community above and beyond just a paycheck?
I absolutely am in favor of a report. Absolutely. Where did they work? Because oftentimes they have to find employers who are willing to allow them to work there. And that has been a challenge for several years. So we can't get too picky about where they work because you kind of have to get, which employers are available. But I am absolutely in favor of a report. I think that is a great approach. I think this should continue to be a priority each year. Perhaps a commitment to allocate the funds and put those funds aside pending the report. The report is not available, there are no metrics, then of course. But I think it should be a priority every year. And if we receive a report that is acceptable to this commission, then I think we should continue to move forward. And if we were only able to impact that small amount that they indicated, however, the need was 100% more than we were able to accommodate, then we can talk about, okay, let's increase it a bit to impact more children and families in our community. But I think it should be minimum $50,000 every year, pending an acceptable report.
We could definitely structure the agreement that way.
Well, and to your point about some potential employers choose not to participate, I wouldn't want the report to say that ABC Bank refused to participate, but, give us some idea that we were unsuccessful in financial institutions or what have you, so that we can, help create a better process and program as the years go by. Mr. Vice Mayor.
Mr. Manager, do we have any other reoccurring allocations that follow those same guidelines? Let's say, for example, the EDC or any other allocations that we do on an annual basis.
For example, the EDC, no. It's just budgeted in there. There's no benchmarking, how many businesses they brought to the city or anything like that, no.
So this is a need to provide youth jobs. The need is always going to be there. But I get your point. If it were up to me, I'd keep it on a recurring basis every year with the report, but allocate it.
Yeah, I think it's incumbent on us to have that report and analyze, the adjustments. I'm going to assume the necessary and appropriate upward adjustments to the program in the future. But to your point, EDC is probably not a good example. That's not automatic, is it?
I believe we budgeted for it in the budget every year now,
But
since
it's
it came
not
on board.
automatic. It's a,
Well, I mean, it's in the approved budget the council approves
okay.
in September.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
Thank you. And with regard to like the EDC, for example, I feel like I expected there to be more reporting, but since we have so much communication between our colleagues and that organization, I feel like the reporting is happening. However, it's a good point that there should be an expected report.
Equal treatment for all of
Yeah,
these
agreed.
recipients.
So maybe take a look at, all of our contracts that are on that reoccurring automatic, what feels like an automatic approval or renewal, and maybe call for reports.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Including Main Street. All right, so did we have a motion a second to approve your item? You want to move it?
Move the item.
Moved by the Vice Mayor, second by Councilwoman Avila.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
just for clarification, we talked about a renewal. Do we want a renewal? We can build in a renewal at the city's option to execute based on the performance of the organization. They are required under the agreement to provide documentation for every worker, every employer. All of that is already here. In addition, we have the ability to terminate at our convenience. So if at any time you feel like they're not performing up to the standard, the city can, on 30 days' notice, walk away. So do you want
It
just...
sounds like those safeguards are already there.
They are. If you'd like, just, I can tighten it up with, a summary report for performance, and then a renewal of the city's option, which we can execute, at our leisure. If in the future you want to increase the amount, it would necessitate an amendment to this anyway. So that would be brought back to you if you wanted to up the allocation.
Very good.
Okay?
All right. Is there any public comment on this item? We'll close the public hearing. We have a motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Next item is tab 3, motion to place car number 3879 on the council agenda, the NERC Reliability Standards Development. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Homestead Public Services Energy Department is required by the federal government to follow certain standards associated with electrical infrastructure grid reliability. The regulatory standards are complex and dynamic, which require a tremendous level of expertise to interpret and implement correctly. HPS Energy wishes to partner with Guidehouse Consulting to leverage their expertise in developing mitigation procedures for any HPL self-reports or procedural variances to FERC. Guidehouse has been partnering with the HPS Energy for the past 7 years and is familiar with all the HPS Energy and FERC systems, policies, procedures, and requirements. Staff recommends that Mayor and Council approve the attached resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Guidehouse, Inc. for consulting services pertaining to NERC reliability standards and to assist with the development of procedures as they apply to the city's self-reporting to Federal Energy Regulatory Commission for an amount not to exceed $50,000. This is a one-year agreement.
Thank you, sir. Council? One-year agreement? Questions, comments, motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Moved by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Councilwoman Bailey with a question from Councilwoman Avila.
Thank you. Sorry. I'm going to try to make tonight early for all of us, okay? But I do have a question. Does this include like water pressure services, water services?
Oh, no. This is totally electric utility. It has
Electric
nothing
only?
to do with the water department. No.
Okay, good. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Well, piggybacking on our last couple of conversations, and I think I mentioned it with you in our council briefing, we have mitigation consulting expense for the mitigation property every year. We have other electrical, water treatment, drinking water. I think it would be beneficial for us as we go into budget season to know what those recurring regulatory costs are every year. They seem like they're really starting to become more frequent and accelerate and increase. And I think we need to know that as we go into budget season, and the public needs to know that these are expenses that are mandated for us to incur by other government entities and agencies. And I think it would be very eye-opening for all of us.
Mayor, we'd be more than happy to put those lists together, and the
Just
cost
think
as well.
as we begin to get into the budget year, just to understand, it's a lot of money that comes right off the top. That a lot of times is busy work.
You got it. Yes.
All right.
A question for the
Yes,
manager.
Vice Mayor.
Does it have to be a consultant that does this consulting work, or can it be a university?
This is very highly specialized, so it's not like you could give it to some student to kind of hash it out for you.
So the work that gets involved needs a stamp of an engineer it was reviewed, and it gets that engineer stamp on that report, and that's what the other government agency requires in order to allow us to proceed with whatever we're doing?
Well, you're getting into the micro level, but yes, I'm sure an engineer has to stamp off on the requirements that the electric utility has to meet to ensure it meets all federal requirements, you know, for safety, cybersecurity, things of that nature.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think we had a motion. Did we have a motion? We had a motion and a second to approve. Is there any public comment on this item? We'll close the public hearing. All in favor? Any opposed? Our next item is tab 4, and it's the motion to place car number 3877 on the council agenda. Item number 2023-17, the renewal of the holiday decoration, or the entry into a holiday decoration contract. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. On February 17th, 2023, the Procurement and Contract Services Department issued ITB number 2023-17, Holiday Decorations for citywide holiday decorations. Notices were sent out to 142 vendors, and 2 responses were received. Staff recommends that Mayor and Council authorize the city manager to award ITB 2023-17 to Riley Outdoor DBA Christmas Designs Florida DBA Holiday Outdoor Decor for citywide holiday decorations for an estimated annual expense of $83,500.48. This recommendation for award will also provide the city manager with the authorization to approve price adjustments and renewals as needed and within the established departmental budget. This is a 3-year agreement with the option to extend for 2 additional 1-year terms.
Thank you.
And I just
Yes.
want to put there, like Matt mentioned, the previous agreement, if we're unhappy with the service, the city can terminate the agreement at any time.
Very good. If you could outline for us, I believe there were some additional items in this contract above and beyond the contract that just expired. Let's clarify what those are so that we know what the additional is.
Yes, that's correct. So we have added an additional tree here for City Hall. That's the 28-foot panel tree with star, as well as palm wraps on the palm trees here at City Hall. And I believe this also includes, there was a larger tree at Losner Park than we had previously had in the past that was included here as well.
I think some additional wreaths and column wrapping.
Yes, that's correct.
The thing where you stand behind, put your face through a Christmas.
Yes, those
setting
little
as-
figures,
as well.
the decorations that we had to
Right.
add additional last year.
And we're comfortable that the light pole fixtures are comparable or better than what we've become accustomed to over the last few years?
Yes.
Okay. Because, I mean, we don't have any catalogs or examples here in the package.
We could definitely send you they send samples of different cities, so we can definitely get the catalog
Do
of
we
what they're
choose
proposing
that?
for us.
Do we have a range of choices every year?
I think it's pretty static.
Yeah, I believe it's pretty standard, but we'll check if there are options within.
If we can, we've got the ability to go a little bit further north on Chrome like we used to do. It's pretty dark north of 15th Street. There's not a lot.
We could
going
talk to
on
the
up there.
vendor. I'm sure they're going to be an
Yeah.
additional cost, but
Because
we'll definitely go ahead
I
and
think
talk to them.
we've lost the truck bypass because those poles that I guess the state put in didn't include plugs as we used to have for the lighted the illuminated decorations on the poles. Councilman Fairclough Staggers.
Yes, thank you. We just had this conversation at one of our CDD meetings, and the vendor that we used, they provided us with like a rendering of like what it would look like. And we gave them a theme of what we wanted to see, as opposed to just snowman and things just, throughout our community. We're very specific with what we wanted. So with this, if we can see some options of what they've done in other cities, then we can actually see the quality of it. Because in years past, they kind of recycle the ribbons and they were faded and it just looks a mess. So if we can see the quality of their items and to give us a frame of reference of what to expect.
Yes, ma'am. We'll go ahead and provide that to council this week. And anyways, this is coming on consent anyway, so if there's an issue, we could pull it off at that point.
Yeah, okay, so let's move it forward. If you can circulate that this week, that would be helpful. Yes, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mayor. And one last thing to add is I don't see any details as far as, where on Chrome it ends, where down 4th Street it would end, just to make sure that they are continuing it down 4th Street like we just started.
We'll provide a map with the boundaries shown over here.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you. All right, do we have a motion to approve? Did you have? No? Okay. Moved by Councilwoman Bailey. Second by Councilwoman Avila. Any public comment? Close the public hearing. All in favor? Any opposed? Our next item is tab 5, and it's motion to place car number 3884 on the council agenda, bid number 2023-03, debris removal services. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. The Federal Emergency Management Administration recommends municipalities establish emergency debris management contracts to be activated in the event of a declared emergency, such as a hurricane. This contract provides for services for the execution of natural disaster-related emergency debris removal from federal aid highway segments, state, local, and private roadways within the Florida Department of Transportation, the City of Homestead, and Miami-Dade County. Also, it includes, but is not limited to, field operations, debris pickup, debris hauling and removal, debris staging and reduction, temporary debris storage, site management, and debris management. All debris removal and disposal management services shall be in accordance with the applicable federal and state laws and environmental regulation. Staff recommends the mayor and council authorize the city manager to award bid number 2023-03 debris removal services to multiple vendors in accordance with the bid tabulation. Primary award, TFR Enterprises, Inc. Secondary award, Looks Great Services of MS, Inc. And tertiary award, DRC Emergency Service. Now, there's no cost at all whatsoever for this award at this time. Now, if the city does use their services after a storm, obviously there's a cost, which we would be reimbursed from FEMA, if I'm not mistaken, up to 80% of that cost.
Thank you. Council, questions, comments? All right, we have a motion to approve. Moved by Councilwoman Bailey, seconded by the Vice Mayor. Is there any public comment? Anything further from council? All right, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, next item, tab 5. Discussion on car number 3904 regarding Senate Bill 102, the Live Local Act, codified at Chapter 2023-17, the laws of the state of Florida. Yes, tab 6. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Did we skip tab 5? Okay. All right.
May,
Yes,
want me to start?
go ahead.
Well, I'll preface this and say, first of all, try not to hurt your head this evening, but probably will hurt a little bit. And don't shoot the messenger. So for discussion this evening, as the mayor mentioned, this is recently adopted and enacted Senate Bill 102, which is commonly referred to as the Live Local Act. And in your packet this evening, there is a brief memo that I prepared in working with your staff. That's sort of in an answer question format, as well as the applicable statutory, the applicable statute, but highlighted in 2023-17 at page 8, the yellow highlighted language, if it's in color in your packet, shaded, that's the applicable preemption language that we'll be talking about tonight. Also, in your packet is the section from your zoning code dealing with the maximum density in the city, as well as the section from the zoning code dealing with the residential minimum unit sizes. Also, there is a handout that the Development Services staff prepared that has all of the zoning categories in the city. It's a spreadsheet, and then it goes through applicable land development regulations related to those zoning categories. And what we'll be talking about this evening are the various mixed-use categories that you have, as well as the commercial and industrial categories. And then I also, in order to synthesize all this and try to make it easy to understand, I have a brief PowerPoint presentation. You have a copy of it, and so I'll sort of introduce the preemption aspect of what we're talking about this evening, and then we can segue into discussion, conversation from that, if that's prerogative. Okay. So as I said, this Senate Bill 102, Tallahassee and the governor's office has basically indicated or provided that this is landmark legislation that was adopted to address workforce and affordable housing throughout the state. So in addition to the preemption issues that we're going to discuss this evening, what's not here are there other issues with respect to financing, tax credits, things of that nature that developers can avail themselves of for low-income, affordable housing, workforce housing. So what we're going to talk about this evening is the section that deals with what we call the preemption, zoning preemption section of the law. And under 166.041.151, affordable housing, Section 6 was already an existing section that provides that the governing body, the city, may approve housing that is affordable as defined by the Florida statute, including but not limited to mixed-use residential development on any parcel that's zoned commercial or industrial if 10% of those units are affordable. The change here was that mixed use was replaced for residential. It just said residential before, and now residential has been taken out and it says mixed use. So this is not mandatory, it's you may consider it. It's not telling you that you have to. The zoning preemption section that we're going to talk about is the next section in the statute, which is Section 7. And it deals with zoning preemption specifically with density, use, and height, all related to affordable housing. And so, just go through this. So essentially what the statute says is that the city must administratively approve, authorize multifamily and mixed-use residential as allowable uses in any area zoned for commercial, industrial, or mixed use. However, in order to avail yourself of that, you have to meet certain benchmarks or criteria that's built into the statute. The first is that any proposed development that is going to avail themselves of this has to have a minimum or at least 40% of those units in a multifamily rental development are affordable for at least 30 years. So it's the rental aspect. You have to have a rental aspect, and 40% has to be allocated to affordable rental. The statute goes on to say that if at least, so in those proposed development, if it meets the land development regulations, setbacks, unit size, parking for multifamily development, an area zoned for that use, you get to take advantage of the administrative process. But in addition, you also have to meet, if it's a mixed-use residential project, 65% of the total square footage must be used for residential. That's in addition to the 40% criteria. Now, what's critical here is that the statute also says that the city cannot require a proposed, let's call it a preemption project for purposes of this discussion, to obtain a zoning or land use change, a special exception, a conditional use approval, a variance, or a comp plan amendment or change as it relates to building height, zoning, or densities. And we'll get into that a little bit more specifically in the next slide. So the statute says that this administrative approval process, a developer gets to avail themselves of this with no further government action if they meet these criteria. And no further governmental action would be no public hearing, no further public hearing, that's going to come before you all as an administrative, as the elected body. It's just administrative. When it talks about density and height, the statute says that the density may not be restricted to below the highest allowed density in the municipality where residential is allowed. So citywide, where we allow for the highest density right now would be the base level, or the base density that someone who wants to take advantage of this and avail themselves of a preemption project would get to utilize. And we can get into a little bit further discussion with that, but that is across the board, right? So that doesn't include non-conforming uses. So we have a couple of projects, a couple of developments that are non-conforming to density in the city right now, but those won't serve as the baseline, right? It's only for what's currently allowed, excluding the non-conforming density, as well as non-conforming height. The height provision, preemption provision, stipulates that height may not be restricted to below the highest currently allowed height for commercial or residential development located within its jurisdiction within 1 mile of the proposed development, or 3 stories, which is ever higher. So it's further clarified the height is within a 1 mile radius, whatever the highest is, or 3 stories. The density doesn't have a 1 mile, so it's citywide. Again, non-conforming developments aren't considered for purposes of establishing what that density or that height is. The statute also stipulates that the city must consider reducing parking requirements if a proposed development is located within a half mile of a major transit stop as defined in the municipality's land development code, and the stop is accessible from the development. We don't have a major transit stop defined in the code, but in speaking with development services, I think everyone is at least in agreement at this juncture that a major transit stop would be Homestead Station and the BRT stations that are located right here by Miami-Dade College and City Hall. Statute also provides that commercial or industrial designated properties, that if you have less than 20% of land within the city that is commercial or industrial, then you must approve a multifamily development for mixed use only. It doesn't say just purely residential, which is multifamily. It has to be a mix of uses. I don't think that you're going to fall into this category we were discussing. I think your commercial and your industrial exceed the 20% threshold. We're going to verify that, but as it stands now, I don't think you definitely not with commercial, and I think we surpassed the industrial. And there's other broad provisions in the statute. Basically, it says, unless otherwise provided in that subsection of the statute, a proposed preemption project or development still has to comply with other applicable state and local laws. And the section doesn't apply to properties defined as recreational and commercial working waterfronts in any area zoned as industrial, which you don't have any areas that fall into that category in your industrial zoning districts. And the provisions of these preemption provisions are temporary for at least 10 years. So they run through October 1st of 2033. However, this law becomes effective on July 1st of this year. So all of that, where does that leave us? So it leaves us with what can be enforced given the preemption provisions that are provided. And we as a city still have our ability to enforce our comprehensive plan with the exception of height, density, or uses. So someone who wants to avail themselves gets a free pass on those issues. So if there's a conflict in the comp plan with respect to zoning, height, or density, then the statute allows them to move forward. But everything else in the comp plan would still be applicable. It allows you to still enforce setbacks, lot coverage, the typical land development regulation types of things that we have in our code. Parking lot, floor area ratio, impervious area, minimum lot size, minimum unit size, design regulations. And again, if it's something other than height, density, or zoning, we still can require a comp plan or rezoning, special exception, conditional use variances under the preemption statutory provisions. So we've identified in working with development services, at a minimum right now, there are a few things that are necessary that the city would need to adopt or do in order to address the applicability and implementation of this law once it goes into effect. And that is, there is no provision currently laid out in the code or anything in the code that provides for a different administrative review procedure that's provided for currently in our code. So we have administrative review, but this is going to be different because at the end of that administrative review, if there's an appeal, it comes to you all. And in this case, it wouldn't. So we'd have to at least carve out so everybody would know that it's separate and apart from what we already have in our code. The second aspect is that currently you have a number of mixed-use zoning districts already in place in the code. And presumably if someone met all the threshold criteria and wanted to take advantage of this preemption statute for this a particular development, they could follow the land development regulations that are already in existence for those for those mixed-use zoning categories, except for density, except for height. What you don't have is anything that references residential or mixed use or what the land development regulations would be for any of your commercial zoning districts or any of your industrial zoning districts. So at a minimum, we'd want to provide some sort of supplemental district regulations that dictate what the applicable land development regulations would be in your commercial zoning districts and your industrial zoning districts. And you already have a business mixed use category. If you look at the provisions of the residential minimum unit sizes, so at the very end of that, there is a business mixed use category that provides for a reduced unit sizes that already exist in the code if you're coming into that business mixed use zoning district. So with respect to the commercial zoning and the industrial districts, that minimum unit size could be applied, or you could use the generally applicable base minimum unit sizes that would apply. So those are some things we can talk about with respect to importing what the applicable regulations would be if someone wanted to come in and take advantage of this in your commercial or industrial zoning categories, as opposed to leaving it blank and there be in a free-for-all and nobody knowing exactly what the rules are. The other thing to consider is that the end of 2019, you all adopted mixed-use and commercial design standards for all of your mixed-use and commercial and industrial categories, which include design regulations, architectural standards. So those would be, we could pull from those and have those be applicable to this as well. So those are some of the things that we've already identified that you'll need to do at a minimum, but certainly if you all want to do more or modify existing mixed-use zoning district regulations or minimum unit sizes, we certainly can, and that's what's sort of on the floor for discussion tonight, to sort of give you a broad overview of what the preemption statutory provisions provide and dictate, and at a minimum what we need to do to address when this goes into effect. We have something in the code that stipulates what those applicable land development regulations will be. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I'm sure you do. So I've tried to do it in two formats. Basically, sort of provide the statutory language, which you have to keep going back and forth the provisions and read in tandem. So that's the genesis of the memo, which is sort of in a question-answer format, as well as a broad overview in the PowerPoint presentation.
So it sounds like we need to write a whole new section that in shorthand says, if you are building, if you're doing a project pursuant to the Live Local Act, these development regulations apply.
Right.
And they can be different than the regulations that apply to residentially zoned properties. Is that correct?
Right, because residential is not on the table here.
Right.
So you already have several mixed-use categories in the zoning code that contemplate residential and other uses. So those are already in place, right? So if someone were to come in one of those zoning categories, they would just follow those land development regulations. What we don't have is there's nothing in our code that contemplates that residential or mixed use would be in commercial or industrial.
Right.
So it's just void of anything with respect to if someone were to come in and they wanted to build a development project, what the applicable land development regulations would be. You don't certainly have to start from ground zero, recreate the wheel. You can pull from what you've already done and adopted and create supplemental regulations that would apply at a minimum to any project availing themselves of a Live Local in any of these commercial or industrial zoning categories.
Right. So according to your chart, it looks like our highest density at this point is 31 that's allowed in the city. And scanning through the chart, Michelle's nodding in agreement. Potentially, though, if the Flagler and Chrome property gets its second reading, that'll take it to about 38. We also have the Triangle property.
So the Flagler, you're correct, Mayor. So right now, the highest densities are properties that
31 right now.
31. The Flagler property, there hasn't been a comp plan or a zoning code yet adopted to implement that, but based on the proposed development of that Flagler lot property, that density, because it's based on net,
Right.
would be upwards of 63 units.
63, that's right, that's right. And we're talking about somewhere between 45 and 60 potentially in the triangle property,
Yes, based on,
depending upon what proposals
yeah, I
come in.
think up to 60 is
Right.
what I've been told. So I don't think we have a final, but it's,
Yeah. So we're somewhere in the 60s is where we could end up at risk at some point. And just so my colleagues know, I think James and the manager and Mr. Pearl and I have had some lively discussions about strictly reading the new state statute doesn't make any carve out for RTZ. So if I were coming here as a developer, I'd say no. The RTZ allows 250 units per acre on this county-owned parcel in the city of Homestead. That's what I want. And that's one of my, big concerns as well. I mean, the four corners of that document doesn't make that distinction. So, right now we're talking about somewhere between 31 and 250. We'll see what kind of glitch bills come up next year, but I'm sure that July 1, I'm told that we're going to have people banging on our door to avail themselves of this. So are there any suggestions as to where we might go in writing those new code provisions to address this? I mean, you've got unit sizes here. Certainly, let's just say for sake of argument that in round numbers, our highest density in the future is 40, okay? Could you write, for example, that, the first 40, you may be able to get the smaller unit size in there, but any units above that 40 unit per acre mark, if somebody were to come in and, go into the 250, or let's say let's say 68. The Flagler property is at 68, which is a unique, niche city-owned piece of property that was very, very nuanced. Could you delineate that any density above this number would have to have larger minimum size units? I mean, our code now contemplates, a much lower density and allows in certain circumstances for smaller units. Is that an option available to us?
it's hard to say with any specificity at this point because it's so new and nothing's been tested or there's nothing to, it's just broad brushstrokes at this point. I feel comfortable that you could adopt a unit size that's different for this, like you have for the Southwest neighborhood, like you have for this business mixed use, but in each of those categories, there's a reduction in the unit size from what the base level is. So if you wanted, it just depends on what you wanted to do. Certainly, you could make an argument that, okay, if it's business mixed use, and then someone's wanting to take advantage of mixed use in business or industrial, that you would follow suit, but I think you could certainly increase that.
But I guess, let me interrupt you real quick. In that regard, if we're going to write a new code that's applicable to the availing of the Live Local Act, you could create a whole new bell curve of unit configurations and size with really no bearing on what exists now. So we could go there as well, probably more easily than the first 20 units per acre. Yeah. You can have a residential code, and above that you've got something else.
That's certainly cleaner and much more straightforward.
I'd love to hear what the thoughts of the rest of you are. This, James, this is making my head hurt, and I've been immersed in this since it came off the press the first time back the beginning of session. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's say, for example, we remove Miami-Dade's 250 units an acre. If we adopt the flats, that would make it 63 units an acre, right? That would be the
base level.
That would be the base.
That in the future, if someone were to come in and meet all the benchmarks of the statute and our land development regulations, they would get to take advantage of that base as the density.
So unless we're planning to not move forward with that, it's going to be either 63 units an acre or Miami-Dade's 250. Is that a correct statement?
When and if that we adopt that and apply it.
You're
So
speaking
this
of
is for 10 years. So what the mayor is saying is that it's not in effect right now, but in short order, in a couple of years, it will be potentially.
Well, what I'm saying is my fear is that a proponent of a project will come in with the proposition that the RTZ ordinance currently permits 250 acres, 250 units per acre within the city of Homestead. It's not our code, but is it a county code that has preempted us?
Okay.
That's my fear. Yes.
Hold on. Let me just finish this thought. So, when in the packet it says a municipality must consider reducing parking requirements if the development is located within a half a mile of a major transit stop, which we know we've got 3 of them here. When you say must consider, what does that mean exactly?
Well, must is shall, right? Shall consider.
Shall consider.
It doesn't say approve, it just says shall consider.
Shall consider.
Shall consider.
And then you could say we considered and said no.
In the land development code. But if you don't have anything defined in the land development code and it's shall consider, I mean, you can make a smirky argument that, but when you look at the intent and you read the legislative history and the intent, I think it's to give some effect to considering a reduction in parking for workforce, for affordable, that's located near a transit stop. Because theory being that those workforce affordable units will likely
not need a car, potentially.
Or there would be a reduced need for it.
So then
it's not clear. So it's not clear because it's not the best. It's poorly drafted legislation, right? The mayor's shaking his head because it's poorly drafted, and so we're just trying to figure out, based on the legislative intent, would somebody challenge us on it? Sure, they could. If you were to take the approval where you have to consider it, but you don't have to approve anything, right? Shall consider, but if you're looking to give body to the full legislative history and the intent behind this, I would say that even though it says must consider, it doesn't say shall reduce parking. I think the intent is that there be some sort of reduction in parking.
Okay, so I understand the key points of the legislation, and I understand that this could, there are some benefits and there are some disadvantages. And what are we trying to accomplish here to understand how we can safeguard ourselves from the vague language and how we can utilize what our code currently has to help protect us from that? Is that what we're having this discussion for?
Well, I think we're having a discussion so that you know.
So we could understand.
You understand what the scope of this is because there's been so many questions about it, right? So you have a working knowledge, you understand what the scope of the preemption language is, what it does, and what we can and what we can't do. And so even if you decide not to do anything this evening or change anything, I'm simply pointing out to you that we've already identified that there are existing holes in the statute that we should at least provide some regulations for, so that in the event someone comes in to avail themselves of this and they meet all the thresholds, the question's going to be, if I'm in a commercial or industrial zoning district, what are the applicable land development regulations?
Okay.
And we have none, right? We have them for mixed use zoning categories, but right now, commercial and industrial doesn't contemplate a mixed use or contemplate residential. And so even though the comp plan doesn't provide for any residential, they get a free pass on that, right? So it's almost like it's zoned for, you have to think about it as on the permitted use list, it would allow for multifamily mixed-use development. And so instead of doing that in every zoning category under industrial and commercial, that's a given based on the statute, right? But we would adopt supplemental regulations that would say we are going to utilize business mixed use, or we're going to utilize these are the set of regulations that would apply.
So if we didn't do anything,
At a minimum, I think you still need to do that.
okay, what could potentially happen is someone could come over to the Park of Commerce and all of a sudden decide to build mixed-use residential there.
AQs, issues aside.
Right. Is that what could potentially happen if we didn't adopt or we didn't create some sort of regulation? Okay. But that's what can be enforced is giving us an idea on how to control that. Okay. I get it.
And I'm also thinking, for example, just the vague, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, but just clarify. Well, the DRI is basically a big PUD. It's not zoned mixed use, it's not zoned commercial, or it's not zoned industrial. So I would assert that you can't avail yourself of anything in the PUD.
Good. Yeah, go ahead, and then I'll interject.
I was just trying to figure out a way where, I mean, I like the idea of providing housing solutions for being able to live local. But is there no way to make these not for rental but for affordable purchases? Is there any way to make it where you can buy versus like buy a condo?
It doesn't
versus-
preempt you from having a mix of market rate and rental. The statute says if you're going to avail yourself of this, at a minimum, 40% of the units have to be rental and affordable as defined under Florida statutes, which then gets into the very low, moderate. So it doesn't preclude market rate, but it doesn't mandate market rate. It does mandate that a minimum, it could be 100% rental, but at a minimum it has to be 40%, and it has to be rental. It can't be all market rate.
To avail themselves, you have to be 40% of the units have to be deemed affordable. Rentals.
affordable, but it has to be rental.
Yes.
Okay. And then under your Q&A document, which I really like, thank you for that. Help me understand where under number 3,
Okay.
a local government that designates less than 20% of land within its jurisdiction for commercial or industrial use must authorize a proposal. So we designate less than 20% of our land? Did we do that analysis?
You currently have zoned industrial and commercial categories, right? And so if you're a municipality or a city that has less than 20% of inventory of commercially zoned property or industrially zoned property, what this is saying is that you can't come in and just solely build multifamily with no mixed-use component. What it's dictating that is if you are less than the 20% inventory, it mandates that you have to do a mixed-use development, which would be residential plus, not just residential.
But we're not at that low level. Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mayor. So obviously this discussion can go on for a million years. But basically my first thought after I pulled myself out of the rabbit hole that I went into, because you just come up with all of these if this then that's. So I think for me, what would be the most helpful are to see some of our worst case scenarios when we are considering density and our vision and, where are those, where's that half mile? Because at first I'm thinking what land is available, but obviously any developer could buy the land. And here we're thinking of a lot of these farming areas that we're losing. So I would like to see where are some of these worst case scenarios. And then maybe that can help with what we can look at code related to see. The other thing that I thought of was for the supplemental regulations, is there anything that we can change as far as what we require? I'm sure every municipality has different codes for what their administrative review entails. So is there anything additional that we could have that would trigger that?
You're pretty comprehensive, remember, because you just modified
Right.
to streamline,
Yeah.
right? So someone would still have to come in and follow all the administrative site plan approval, everything you require to review that. The only difference is that in this case, under administrative approval, right, normally if it's tied to a plat or it's tied to a zoning, a variance request or something, then that triggers you all to review it, right? But if they're not asking for anything different, right, than what our land development regulations stipulate, and they are utilizing the base density and the height and nothing else, then it preempts any further government review other than administrative. So I just think we need to, memorialize that or carve that out. I don't have that exact language, but I don't anticipate that would be any different than what the minimum is necessary for staff to be able to adequately review a site plan. A survey is needed, those types of things.
I get that. I think that what I can't wrap my head around so much is how different each piece of the city is related to our code. So it would make a big difference. Vice Mayor brought up the Park of Commerce. I thought about that first, but then you don't have those transit lines. So that's not going to be one of our highest dense, one of those worst case scenarios, like I'm thinking. So maybe if we can look at that and see where those areas are, that would help see where we need to target first related to downtown or...
Sure. I mean,
does that make sense?
We do anything you all want with respect to visuals or mapping, but just keep in mind that you have a very short turnaround in time on this because this is effective July 1st. So we need to get something at a minimum on the books.
That's why I thought looking at our worst case scenarios and those administrative reviews, maybe that is the quickest way to get. And of course, you guys telling us what you feel would make the biggest impact. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's probably best for the short time frame we're on, but we talk, these are the worst case scenarios that immediately come to my mind. For example, somewhere between the 68 units and the 250 units an acre and the 7 stories and the 25 stories, that makes our entire downtown very attractive for someone to buy up the entire thing, bulldoze it and build nothing but high-rise, at a minimum, 40% affordable, or downtown disappears overnight. So, and James, just thinking out loud, for example, you could define the regulations for our defined downtown, that any of that sort of development must be mixed use, so that you would, am I kind of on the right track there,
Yeah,
James?
so you already have
Yeah.
downtown mixed-use
Yeah.
zoning category, right? Which already has a list
Yeah,
of LDRs.
that anything must be mixed use in this defined area, for example.
Right. Well, multifamily or mixed-use development,
But-
provided you meet those
yeah.
thresholds.
Right.
But they get to choose, I mean, whatever the base density
Mm-hmm.
is and whatever that height is preempted. It is what it is, right?
Right.
But you still apply all the land development regulations, so you could still apply an FAR.
Right.
There's still
And
there's still
if-
things that would
We need your
limit-
help getting into that, but no, just to clarify, Live Local does not require all the projects to be mixed use. It could be multifamily from the ground up in our downtown, for example. Second worst case scenario, right over here, Homestead Plaza, 20 acres. Worst case scenario, 5,000 units on that 20-acre parcel on Camel Drive and English Avenue. Those are my worst case scenarios. And when you think about, I've kind of got mixed emotions about this. The ultimate interpretation of this statute makes it viable for some of these junkyards to go away. But are we going to trade junkyards for 25-story towers of at least 40% affordable? Those are my worst case scenarios, and I think we need to, you're probably right, work from the downtown core outwards.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So
Vice
how,
Mayor.
how can we define for sure, who do we have to ask regarding the county's 250 units an acre? Just so we can remove that thought or even consider it. Is there,
right now, it's adopted, right? But we haven't done anything to implement that.
The county preempted us,
Yeah.
and the state said, you can do this if you meet these standards. You can do this at the highest density permitted in a municipality, which, worst case scenario, the highest density is the RTZ density on that one county parcel at 250 units an acre. Worst case scenario.
so unless we do something,
That's what we're
unless
facing.
we give Mr. Attorney direction, it
But
could,
that's not anything that you're going to be able to do.
Yeah.
That's automatic, what the mayor's saying. There's nothing that you can adopt or put in land development regulations that is going to preempt that density.
But setbacks, floor area ratios, unit sizes can help soften that blow. Sure.
So are these legislative acts, I mean, are our lobbyists not privy to these things? I mean, until you get to it and then we start to talk about it, which I appreciate you bringing it to us to talk about. But why are we not like fighting this before it happens?
If there was
Where are
ever a
we-
done deal in the legislature, I have never seen so much sitting on hands in my life.
And is there any way to apply for an exception? We have the RTZ. Maybe that's enough. Did we ask?
I think
Are
it's
we
certainly
excluded?
something that you can lobby for next year. But that would be a question directed to the manager with respect to your legislative lobbyist. But as the mayor said, I think, I mean, there were so many, look, this is applicable to both county and municipalities.
It's statewide, obviously.
Statewide.
So can we, what would it cost for us to appeal this as a municipality and using the RTZ as the reasoning why we should not be subject to this? Because it's kind of already taken care of. So this is like double jeopardy, you know? Is that an option? Is that feasible? Do you guys feel, that it's worth an argument? I just want to make sure we at least talk about that option.
Well, I don't know. I think trying to challenge the state with respect to the enactment of this is probably an uphill battle. But I certainly think that if you all wanted to, now I don't know if at the end of the day it would be a winning argument, right? But I certainly think that we could look at it, but you could probably make an argument that that the density and the height is what's currently allowed, right? And it's not the RTZ.
Councilwoman, I believe Mr. Mayor already tried that early on before it even got to a vote at the state level. He got shot down really quick.
Or like ignored. I mean, think about it. With the exception of 3 representatives, I think, from the Orlando area, it was unanimously passed in the Florida House and Senate. There was enough in it for everybody to come on board wherever you are in that political spectrum. So I think that what we need to do is really not get hung up on, is it 68, is it 250? Put things in place that can address whatever that final number is going to be. But setback, parking, floor area ratios, different standards for different areas.
And if I may, just to finish my thought, thank you. Just trying to also focus on what would be the best case scenario and how do we incentivize that happening with our development community. So let's also try to have light at the end of this tunnel, not just all negative. I mean, it's meant to cure a problem in terms of affordable housing. So how can we drive that train if it's coming anyway? Just a little change in perspective, maybe.
Yeah, and we can certainly draft something for you and bring it back. I mean, you'd have to do first and second reading. We may have to have a special call meeting before July 1st to at least have something on the books so that there are, at a minimum, something to point to for commercial and industrial.
Right. Councilman Roth?
Thank you. 2 things. One, as we sit here and ponder what the state has done to us, what are other municipalities throughout the state aligning to do? Are they aligning anything, any kind of a class action to try to fight this statewide? Nothing.
Not to my knowledge.
Not that I'm aware of now.
So everyone is just kind of like,
Everybody's figuring it out right
Everybody's
now.
on their own.
And this impacts every community a little bit differently. It's, when James refers to it as poorly drafted, I like to say they took a chainsaw to something you really needed to use a scalpel with, because they gutted local regulation in a way that will impact every community a little bit differently. And so everyone's trying to address their own particular concerns right now. And, there's discussions amongst the city attorneys about, just the overarching issues, but everyone is trying to get in the weeds and get something on the books before July 1st, because they don't want somebody to come in and have no standards in place at all.
I would think that there would be a coalition put across the state if it was affecting this many people like it's affecting us today. And the debate of the 63, the 250 units, our base would be 63 upon second reading of the Flagler flats. Our base is not 250, as the county may have imposed on property that they own within our municipality. So there's interpretation there as to what our base is, and our base is at the max right now, 31. The 250 units per acre is not something that we recognize. So it could be argued out that unless we go through the Flagler lofts, we're at 63 units, but it's a far different number than 250 units and 25 stories. So what I would be interested in seeing from Development Services is the same request as the last item, with a map and designations of what properties in the city would be affected, which have industrial zoning, which have commercial zoning, which have the commercial mixed-use zoning. So we can see from a picture of, if this happens, another worst-case scenario, where would this development go? Out east is going to be very challenging because of the racetrack and because of the Air Force Base, right? So that's going to be challenging for them to develop out east. And the west part of the city may benefit from something like this as well, with new development, new amenities, and new attractions to the area because of the density that could be put in there. I'm not saying I'm for the density, but we almost have to now work within the rules that were, put upon us, not by our intention. We didn't want to do this. This is something that somebody else is doing to us. And I think James is going to be smart enough to put together some protective language so at least we have a base to work from. I think he understands what we want in most ways, in this to work to try to soften any development that comes in so that we're not inundated with developers. So I think you can help us with that
Well,
in
I
a
can
big
certainly
way.
work with your development service staff and propose language, development standards that would be applicable to the industrial and commercial that we don't have, based off of what we've already done for your review. And we would need to move on that relatively quickly. But if you hold it up for wanting to see maps and all, I think it can be done concurrently, but I think at least get something. You can always come in and tweak it, but if you wait to see maps and all, that's going to take some time, a couple of weeks.
Right. I'm not suggesting we wait, but so we understand, if we put a base regulation towards this in place now, we can always go back and amend it. But if a developer has started their process, we can't amend what they're doing.
But we have to have something in place.
Right. So if we put something in place now, but we can always fix it or amend it. But once somebody puts their process in place, they're stuck with what we've got and not anything that we amend in the future. So I'm okay with that part of it. Eventually, I want to see some maps and figure out what this is really going to look like. But I think the important thing is to get it in place, as long as we can modify it in the future to address some of the changes that we want to make. But I think it's important we get something now and get it there that we all understand. And who knows if it's going to hold up anyways, right? I mean, they could challenge us on anything we do, they can challenge us on. So as long as we've got something in place, it's going to be hard for them to figure out, unless they've got smarter attorneys than we do, and I don't think they do. I think James is pretty smart at what he does here. And not to give you too many kudos, but help us out of this mess we're in now, not that we did it to ourselves, but give us the best information and best advice you can to at least put a stopgap in it now, and then we can fix it as we go forward. So.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
finally, Councilwoman Fairclough Staggers.
Yes, I have a headache at this point.
James warned us.
So, my line of questioning was in alignment to what Councilwoman Avila was saying. This landmark legislation, I can't believe we haven't had any conversations with our legislative delegation or our lobbying team about this. And it's very disappointing that our legislative delegation is supporting something that is, in my opinion, very, very detrimental to our city. You mentioned there's a train coming at us. Oh, this is a train wreck and a hot mess, Councilman Roth. Why would they support something like this? What is the value add for our community? Because I really don't see it. This density is a four-letter word in Homestead. And the prospect or the potential or the probability of having up to 250 units an acre, that is bad news in our community. So why would they support that? Have we had any conversations with them about this?
I have not, Councilwoman, but I believe the mayor did reach out at one point, as the vice mayor had mentioned, and I think the mayor said that he was ignored once he reached out to
From
them.
our delegation?
We all kind of have an understanding, that unseen hand of how things work from leadership in Tallahassee, or you end up out in the annex with a parking space 4 blocks away. I think that's what happened here, is this was a priority of both the House and particularly the Senate leadership, and no one in our delegation or anywhere in the state was willing to cross swords with leadership and say no. Now, I had the opportunity recently at a Mayor's Coalition meeting to have discussion with the president, or the executive director of the Florida League of Cities. And I asked him about the seeming, absence or the lack of advocacy for cities as the process went forward for this bill. And he explained to me that, and I think these numbers are right, that we had a list of 20 concerns, and they conceded the 10. So the Florida League made the decision to take their victory of 10 and go home and stop fighting about the other 10. I mean, we could have a lot of philosophical conversations about the problem in Tallahassee is there aren't former local officials sitting in office anymore. They end up there without ever being in the trenches like we are and seeing the practical reality of it. I mean, look, clearly there is this philosophy that we have to build a unit for everybody who wants to live in Florida, and people are coming across our state line every day in record numbers. And the builders of affordable housing, their money is equal opportunity campaign contributions in Tallahassee. Now, more to point, I did about a 3-page outline to the sponsoring senator and copied to the Senate president of what I thought were some good tweaks that would protect us. Like, just to say that the RTZ mandated density is not the density that applies here. And, I think the mandate from above, from Senate leadership, was we are not adjusting this bill, no accountability to cities, and it went forward. And I feel as though a lot of other cities, through their various representatives, whether it be their lobbyists, their mayors, their attorneys, were in the same position. Now, we're unique. I mean, in South Florida, in a more urban area, we have higher density. And certainly folks out in North Central Florida that they just don't have those issues. I can tell you, when I go to a lot of meetings of mayors and the Miami-Dade League of Cities, that density of 250 or so doesn't scare other municipalities. It's not a concern. And that's probably because they have economics far different than we've ever had or are probably ever going to have. It's really a philosophical headache and problem for me to conceptualize that this was dumped on our heads and on the heads of every city in Florida.
Perhaps our legislative delegation should be here explaining this and talking to the community
We're
about
going to
it.
have to do what we have to do, and maybe we can take the lead in the glitch bill for next year. But
Okay.
James, do you have enough of comment from us to move forward and begin crafting something?
Put something together and get it to
Yeah.
you as soon as we can.
All right, very good. So, yes, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Development Services, can we utilize Gridix to visually see what this density could look like?
Not yet. They're still doing some data conversion with our districts that are not codified. And we're currently in citywide testing phase. So I don't think that that's going to be ready in time because we're running against the clock.
All right, thank you all. On our final tab, and if you thought the last discussion would give you a headache, get 7 people to agree on architecture and style. Tab 7 is car number 3878, the Homestead Sports Complex Phase 1 Design 2.0, I guess it would be fair to call it. Mr. Manager, is this you?
Thank you, Mayor. Vermilla Ajamil and Partners has provided staff with several design options for the Homestead Sports Complex Phase 1 design based on input received from Mayor and Council. Staff is seeking direction from Mayor and Council on the preferred design and color for the Homestead Sports Complex buildings, and they are here for a presentation.
Good evening.
Welcome
I'm
back.
Kirk
Good
Olney
evening.
with Vermeil Ahamil. I'm a partner and landscape architect. I'm joined with James Bowers, who I think you're all familiar with, who is also a partner and architect. We are the design team working with staff on the development of the sports complex. And as he said, we're here to talk about and give you additional concepts for the concession restroom building. So the first thing I want to show you for frame of reference is the whole park in context of the existing conditions as well as the proposed improvements. So the green background is obviously the existing conditions, and the white is the overlay of the master plan. You can see the accident zone from the Air Force Base as well as the school off to the left-hand side, which is to the west. And so I'm going to zoom in context or just kind of point out the Phase 1 improvements. There's the existing conditions aerial with the Phase 1 outline. And then in the middle of that, which includes the track and the restroom concession building, the multipurpose field, as well as parking. And that's a zoomed in version. And then the highlighted area in red is the concession restroom. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to James to talk about architecture.
Thanks, Kirk. Good evening. So just to give a little bit of a recap, we had come to you before about a couple months ago, and you had asked us to come up with a couple of options in terms of the architectural style. We did get together with every single one of you individually. And so what we have here today for you is 3 additional designs in addition to the original. So we have a total of 4. This is the floor plan itself. It's a small concession kitchen, a storage area which is in the center, and then obviously on the right side we have restrooms for the sports complex as well as the park itself. And so these points that we see here are some of the major items, comments that you provided in our conversations, right? Bring the past, present, and future into the design, make it playful, make it colorful, long life cycle, durability. Those were very critical for some of you. Not boxy, to bring in nature into these facades in terms of materiality, stone and concrete and woods, et cetera, et cetera. There was a couple of slides in there as well that we had slanted roofs and columns with wood as well. And lastly, pops of color, right? So these are the main points that we all discussed individually. And these are, I just have one slide, just generally speaking to, the conversation we had. These are some of the slides that we showed you in terms of the type of architecture, the angles, the finishes, the textures, the colors, et cetera, et cetera. And so having had those conversations, I'll go back to the original. The original, what we had is, and in this presentation, on the bottom side of the presentation, I have materials for you so that you can take a look at in terms of, texture, color, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is original. We had a corrugated metal panel on the storage area. We had a concrete finish as well as a stucco color throughout the facade. The concession was in blue, the storage area was in red with the corrugated metal panel, and then the restrooms had a different tone of color throughout the facades. In this case, we have a separation between the park itself and the sports complex. The food or concession stand would serve both at the same time. And so this is the original design that was provided to you all, shown to you all. After that conversation is when we had a sit down with each one of you individually. And so this is the first option outside of the original, where we're using slanted angles, different materiality. We have a wood tone for the top portion of the building itself. We have the angled roof, and then for the buildings themselves, we have a red tone, somewhat of a hardy board, if you will. And so you can kind of see the contrast between both of these materials, right? We want to make it playful, modern, colorful, yet we want to make it warm enough that we start bringing in the wood tones and wood colors, okay? So this is option one for you. This takes into consideration some of your comments. The second option we have for you is more of a wood tone design. It's more in line with the warmer tones. We still have the hardy board. We still have these materials that have a very long life cycle. And as you can see in this case, we're taking a trellis that comes over the concession stand to be able to provide some coverage at that location, with the buildings themselves with a wood tone veneer attached to it as well. And so here is a view from the exterior portion, from the park portion, where you can see that we have coverage on the sports complex portion behind the fence. Okay, so this is the third option that we have here, which is more agrarian, more we want to bring in the reds, the colors, the natural tones as well. We're going to make it very simple. We did have a comment as it related to the type of architecture locally. And so we came up with this option. We still have the corrugated panel. It's a different type of panel. This is more of a standing seam type panel. Very, very flat. Excuse me. And then we have a wood tone veneer, which is the restrooms themselves. And then we have a wood tone / veneer for the food concession area. We do have a small canopy. The canopy in this case serves as these pops of interest in terms of location of openings into the restrooms, into the food concession area. This is the last pick I have for you. This is a view from the exterior portion of the park towards the interior portion of the sports complex. And so the goal here today is to provide you different options based off of the conversations that we had, and hopefully get some concurrence from you for us to move forward into the next phase of the project itself. Thank you.
Who'd like to kick off the conversation? Councilwoman Bailey.
Thank you, Mayor. Very exciting. Thank you very much for all of that. So one quick question, is it 1, 2, or 3, or is it maybe 4? Sorry. What, there are 4?
It is 4, including the original.
The original, okay.
Which you had issues with.
Can we go back to the first slide, please? So I definitely like the first and second better than the original and this last one. I think that this is an interesting one with the angles. But I think my favorite would be the next one. And I don't know, something about this one, I think it'll be really interesting with the slats and the shadows that it's going to create. I feel like it is very classy. I like the mix of materials. And for the building to be a little more cohesive. I appreciate the future, present, and past. I think that was probably mine. But I don't know, this one is speaking to me now. I think that that further away shot of it, I see it there. I think that that the durability of the materials, I think that's a big thing to take into consideration as well. But I would be leaning towards this one.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Go ahead, Vice Mayor, and then Councilwoman Avila.
That particular angle looks great. Looking at it from the front, and you just have the wood, that's not very appealing, in my opinion. I like the first one. Red and white.
This one?
Yeah, it's pretty simple, colorful. I'm okay with that. But I'll go with the consensus of the body.
Okay.
Councilwoman Avila.
Thank you. I appreciate the options. I think that wherever you're adding awnings and shade and protection from the elements, it's going to improve overall. Which I'm also leaning to the one with the pergola. What is it? A pergola?
It's a trellis.
A trellis.
Right.
But
Pergola trellis. Yes.
but in that trellis, the rain can still come through,
We
right?
can design it so that it doesn't, and still keep the light.
Okay. There were some recommendations that I made to try to incorporate some meeting space, not just, or space where families can host events or host parties. Was any of that incorporated in this?
So that one is mostly incorporated in the one that you just mentioned in the back side of it. We did not put a volume in there for you, but we can definitely incorporate it into this specific one because this covered area lends itself a lot more to that particular option.
Okay.
But this is super easily incorporated into this particular design.
With regards to this shot right here,
Yes.
I don't recall seeing a chain link fence in the prior pictures. Tell me about this chain link fence and why is it there?
Yes, I apologize for interrupting. The chain link fence is to separate the sports complex proper from the park itself. So if you have an event, you can section that off accordingly. The intent is to be able to have it whenever it's open, to be able to have access to both sides of those uses, the concession and the restrooms themselves.
Okay, and when you say the homestead proper, maybe manager's office can help me understand. What do you mean?
So if you can go back to the overview, the overview where we see the aerial. So basically, you have inside the multi-purpose field, we have that fenced off so that if you're having a ticketed event, that you would be able to control ingress and egress. But the way that this building is designed is so that it's serviceable from both the exterior and the interior. If you're, not coming to the ticketed event but still need to use the restroom, you can get inside, right? So as the chain link fence, considering the large amount of fencing, we consider that to be a more cost-effective option doing the nicer black powder coat. But if we want to consider something at the entrances that's a little more aesthetic, we can definitely do that.
Okay, and then regarding the colors, is the way that you show the second option with the overhang to allow for the covered events. we can pick different color schemes on this, or is this, does it
course.
help? Okay.
Different materials, different color scheme, of course.
Okay, and then if you go to the previous picture, that one, all the wood paneling to the front and to the left by the car, that's not part of the covered trellis, is it?
It's
That's
not.
just extra,
It's not. That is fully aesthetic on the facade that then connects to the trellis on the backside that gives you the coverage.
okay, and then do we have to make a decision tonight, or is this more of, is this like, we're gonna keep working at it, or do we have to pick one tonight to stay on time, and what's the goal here?
So we're not under a time crunch. We definitely love to have maybe consensus around one design with tweaks. Like you said, if you want one or two or three, but with different colors, we can certainly accommodate. Obviously, if you're not happy with all three, it will hurt me, but we will go back to the drawing board.
I'm leaning more to, let me see the ones after this one again.
Previous one?
Okay, and then go forward.
Oh, forward.
That's the last one. Keep going. Okay. So I do like the covering on this. I do like the angled roofs on this, but I do want to have that covered area. And I like the red and the white colors. So if there's a way to merge merge the colors, the shapes on this one, and then have that overhang trellis
We
protection.
can incorporate it into this scheme. It's not a problem.
So I'll rest there. I'm happy to keep being inspired.
Councilwoman Fairclough Staggers.
Yes. Thank you so much for bringing us back some exciting options. I really like what is before us, so we're not hurting your feelings tonight because I think they did a better job. I really like the trellis. I really do. But it doesn't protect from any elements. So I have a concern with that. And I think you guys can get a bit creative from using that chain link fence. You need to get, you can get creative with that. Come on, move that chain link fence, get a bit more creative with that. But I would like to see a hybrid option as Councilwoman Avila referenced.
So between this one
Incorporate
and
yes,
the
I like
next
the
one.
trellis. I don't like the frontal view of it. I don't like that. It just looks like wood panels, as you referenced. I don't like that.
So you want a hybrid between this one and the
Yes,
trellis?
and the
You
trellis.
want more coverage as well?
Yes, more coverage. Yes.
Councilor Roth?
Yeah, I'll be simple. I like number one, I like number three, and I want the trellis on one of those two. But apparently it needs to be weather protected too, so we can make it maybe a see-through thing that protects, so you get the sunlight still coming through and add some rain protection. But yeah, either one or two, I'm sorry, one or three with the trellis.
And Councilwoman Bailey.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a quick suggestion because I agree. If we can go to, okay, so imagine you can see the angles here and the way that this trellis comes and attaches to the ground, right? So if we can go first to the front view of, so that needs to be broken up. Maybe have a little more of an angle with the Homestead Sports Complex on it, but just give a little more of that beautiful view from the side to the front. And if you look then at the other one that is going to create this beautiful baby.
This one?
Yes, but the other view, sorry, from the back side, which I think is the most important part for that trellis to really serve as a shade. And I think there's plexi, right? Different things that you can use as a...
Of course.
So if that trellis could come off of the wood building, right, at an angle, maybe that red building had more of a flat roof, and the trellis would come off of that that wood building and create those interesting angles as it is in the other option.
Okay.
I don't know if everybody agrees. Is that along?
Yeah, and it's interesting, Mike, probably no surprise to any of you that I'm partial to the one that's on the screen now in terms of, I think, longevity, an homage to the past. It's got some of the future. And I hate to, some of the others are a little trendy, a little boxy, a little institutional for me. But the first thing I thought of when I'm looking at this in relation to the others, we need more covered space, even at the concession window. When I think about the bathroom that's out there now, you've got that pretty nice covered area there in front of the concession counter and the bathroom. And if there's some way, again, as the others have said, something along the lines of what's on the screen now with some sort of covered area that meshes architecturally with what is shown here. I think I would be good with that, and I'll say I think we've come a long way from the first iterations. If you can bring us something that, again, I think incorporates more of a covered area that's architecturally appropriate, I think we're there, and no chain link. Yeah, we'll spend the money, no chain link.
Okay. So it seems like, and I appreciate that, it seems like option 3 is the way to go with a covered area that obviously gels with the previous option. Okay, option number 2. Okay.
Maybe.
And with an upgraded gate.
I don't know, even thinking out loud, and I hate to use this expression, but something that looks like a pole barn that creates the covered area that meshes with that.
Okay.
All right, so you have what you need?
Yes, sir.
Very good. All right, thank you. I think that is the last formal. Last one didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. Last formal agenda item. Is there anything further from council? Mr. Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just need to announce 2 quick sessions. One in the matter of Figueroa and Olvera v. City of Homestead, case number 19-020117, Miami-Dade County Circuit Court, and another, the Florida Department of Transportation versus Saria and City of Homestead, case number 2018-0927298, also in Miami-Dade County Circuit Court. Thank you.
Very good. Let's make it happen. Mr. Manager, anything?
Nothing for me, sir.
Nothing here. Motion to adjourn? All in favor? Thank you all. Good night. Appreciate it.